All right, Go Produce. Here we are with episode number 6 of the Reflection series. My name is Big Lou. This is Go Produce. This is the podcast where we explore how music industry professionals turn their passions into profit. I'm super excited for you to be here because we've got so much learning to do today. Today, we're going to be talking about producers and engineers. We're going to be covering the topics that we discussed with the previous guests that we've had from seasons 1, 2, and 3. We're going to be summarizing all of that and presenting it to you here in a nice, fun, exciting episode. Make sure to check in every single Wednesday as we release new episodes weekly. Also, make sure to listen till the end because I've got 3 main takeaways that you do not want to miss out on. Hit them with the intro. I could tell you how I felt walking into the studio that first time. I was so excited, but also so nervous. I had no idea what I was doing. Maybe this will help you. Let's hear what the lads at the Kyngdom Studios got to say.
Well, first thing, it's like personality, right? So like before any artist, like I get on a call with them and like this is like, something Ash and I've done. Like we at least talk to them first because a lot of people see the things that we have and the stuff that we're doing. So like, oh man, like I want to work with you. Like, how do I work with you?
Yeah.
So before I do anything, it's always having a phone call because you just want to like catch a vibe. And it's like, could we compute? Like, do I want to have a beer with this person? I want to have that feeling with them. And then I'm more likely to work with them. And I think from there, if you feel like you have a good vibe, then like I'm always open to making music because, there's things that you're going to teach them. And one of the things that I love working with people is like that feeling of like you took their idea and brought it to reality.
Yeah.
And sometimes people are like, oh, I just want to get in and do this or that. But then you're like, no, when you actually see what we can create, that's like the beauty. And I just love that feeling when they're like, man, like I can't believe you just did that.
It's true.
I think there's a lot of different boxes that you sort of look at when you're talking with an artist, and they don't have to necessarily check off every box at that time, but could they? You know, so for us, like you said, personality and vibe is so important. And I tell this to young artists sometimes is, if you're a 3 out of 10 on the talent scale, that's fine. Because I know that you give us 8 months with you, 12 months with you. I know that we can take you from a 3 out of 10 to at least a 7.5 out of 10 in like a year.
It's a
maybe
huge
even
leap.
8 out of 10. But what I can't do is if you're difficult to work with and other people around you, you just have like a certain abrasiveness to your personality. I can't make you be a cool person. Like that has to be something that you already have.
Yeah.
And you got to be looking at that from the consumer and fan base perspective as well. Like, are you going to be the guy that just rubs people the wrong way? So we kind of got out of the realm of like, hey, let's just have like a space where they can book out hourly and anybody can come through here. Now we're like, let's be a little more selective with who we bring in here. And
yeah.
Was
that simpler than you thought it would be? Being relaxed, calm, cool, collected, yourself, casual. It really goes such a long way. Something else you want to keep in mind when you're going to the studio is be prepared. You want to be prepared. You got to rehearse your verse, practice. We spoke about this earlier. You've got to practice your songs before you go in as an artist or as a musician. Come on. And it goes beyond just practice. Make sure all of your files are organized. Be ready. Have them on a USB or email drive, whatever. Make sure it's ready to go so you're not wasting anyone's time. Remember, studio time is paid time. And artists, do you ever wonder what you should be looking for in a studio? Let's hear what Tokyo's got to say.
So if you have a regular room with very little absorption and regular diffusion, the most obvious problem you're going to have is like around that 160 hertz range where you're going to have these waveforms clashing with each other and then phasing out. I mean, that's science. That's the science of what's happening, right? Like, let's say you have an audio gun and you blast a waveform, just a sinusoidal waveform at 80 hertz, and it hits that wall, a perfectly flat wall that's perfectly parallel to me. It's going to come right back to me, right? And 80 hertz is 80 cycles per second. 80 cycles per second is a certain amount of inches or whatever. I don't know but the speed of sound is what, 4,000 something or other. So if you multiply the speed of sound by the cycles per second, you get the inch length of that specific waveform. If you math it out, it's going to hit that wall, bounce back, and then whether or not it hits in phase with itself, right, or out of phase with itself, it'll either double in amplitude or phase and cancel out.
Tokyo Speirs, mix engineer from Walk Off the Earth, tells us that if you're an artist walking into a studio to do a recording session, and if they do not have much absorption in the room, then that might be a sign to like not do your recording there. Keep that in mind. I like to talk to all these different kinds of people because I want to understand the whole industry as a whole. I really think it is critical for professionals to be able to understand most, if not all, of the music industry in order to excel in it. You do not have to be a specialist in everything. Let's be real. You can't do that. But you should be able to properly communicate with your production team. Once the specialists have their thoughts and ideas in mind, then they can go about doing their work. Do not micromanage them. Everyone's got their specialty. Work in your specialty and make sure everyone's working towards the same goal. There's a very high chance that they might know something that you don't know that makes your product stronger. Did you know Dajaun Martineau shared with us a couple of tips on how his beat making was influenced by classical training?
Okay, so beat making, it's a really interesting thing, beat making, because it really comes from DJ culture, and DJ culture is usually sampling and splicing up pre-existing stuff. Now, my classical training has definitely affected me, whether it's for the better or the worse, I don't know. Because I listen to one of my favorite hip hop groups is Pharcyde. And if you listen to the Pharcyde, they completely ignore keys and structure. They will layer samples that are completely off key, and it works for them. And it sounds amazing, but I could never do that in my track.
I wonder how many of you actually knew that, because I for sure did not. That being said, I admit that there's so much more that I do not know, and I'm not even aware of what I don't know. There's so much out there that I'll never know. However, that's not going to stop me from getting out there and learning from feeding my curiosity. How can we possibly learn about things that we don't even know that we don't know? The simple answer is through communication. We've got this ability to do so. We've got this ability to do so. So why not even exploit it, but make use of it and learn from each other's stories and experiences? This is what we're doing here. This is what I'm sharing with you. This is how I'm growing. This is the basis of mentorship. Nygel Asselin tells us of a time where he was interning for Garth Richardson.
I mean, it all started, I went to music industry arts in London, Ontario at Fanshawe College. I ended up there after going through college for something else and not really enjoying it and realizing that I really wanted to do music. So I was like, I'm going to go back to school at 24 to take another program. And being one of the older students there, I was just really motivated to make my second run through college a little bit more productive than my first run, which was probably just a lot of drinking and not being productive. So my goal then was trying to figure out what I was going to do and who I was going to work for. And Garth Richardson actually came through our school and did a guest lecture. I then convinced one of my teachers, who was his friend, to let me chat with him like afterwards and try and secure an internship. And I reached out to him and he was like, yeah, for sure. Let me know when you're in Vancouver and I'll put you to work for sure. And Garth had a history of interns not surviving. So every year someone from Fanshawe would go out there, and every year, 2 weeks later, they would come back and not be able to hack it. And so it had been 10 years since he really kept anyone. And I liked my odds, 1 in 10 could be, a decent odds of success. And so then I kept in touch with him through my final year of Fanshawe. And when I reached out to him, probably about like March of 2009, when I would be almost graduating, I was like, hey, I'm going to come to Van. I'm going to do it. Like, I still want to make sure that there's some work there for me. And he's like, actually, no, I got nothing for you.
After a whole story of trying to get an internship with Garth Richardson, he was finally able to secure it. And not only was he able to secure it, but he holds the record of the shortest internship period with Garth before being hired, not fired. A couple of takeaways that Nygel shared with us is that you've got to ask yourself, what level do you want to play at? Are you committed? Or are you interested? Once you can answer that question, you'll have a better idea of what you're willing to do. The potential relationships and experiences that you can gain from finding a mentor or being an intern or just finding a way so that you can be in an area where you're just absorbing knowledge will prove to be beneficial in the short term and in the long term. But you ever wonder what it's like to get the mentor's perspective? Let's hear what Garth Richardson has to say about his mentoring period with Nygel. What about Nygel Asselin? Do you remember him?
I was waiting for that one.
Yep.
Yeah, Nygel is up here helping me build my studio, right? So him and I had a long conversation about this. So that I'm glad that you brought up his name. He literally showed up, called me up, said, I'm coming out to Vancouver. And I said, yeah, great. You have a job, but no job. So he comes out, he calls me, he shows up to my studio, and he has resumes for all the other studios except for mine. I went, what the fuck, dude? So he didn't leave. And it's the one thing that all you kids have to understand out there is this isn't a job. This is a lifestyle. This is something that you love. The money will come. You want to get a job that's going to pay you money, you get into banking, you get into insurance, and live a really boring, horrible life. Or if you want to get into this business, it's a hard grind. It's an incredible hard grind. I probably worked 3/4 of my life, right? Because you spend from actually 10 a.m. until 4 in the morning every day, Monday through Friday, sometimes Monday to Monday to Monday to Monday to Monday. But Nygel showed up. He thought he knew everything, and I beat the shit out of him. And he's done well.
Yeah.
Right? So,
yeah.
So you have to have somebody like that really kind of wants it bad, right?
I'm not sure if you heard that fully, so I'll say it again. This isn't a job. This is a lifestyle. This is going to be incredibly difficult. You will be working the majority of your life, so you may as well be doing something you love. But the question is, are you willing to put yourself through the rigor of being able to do that? Do you want to see the other side? How badly do you want to see the other side? But remember, no matter where you go, it's not a sprint. If you are really about this lifestyle, you're in it for the long haul. And if you're in it for the long haul, you're going to have to play with the mental game too, because there are a lot of times where things just hit the fan and it's no longer pleasant. But how are you working on your mental? Are you doing something a little bit every day to improve on that? Dan Brodbeck says that the best people are always constantly trying to improve on themselves.
The people that last a long time and are really, really that I would look up to, they never think they're done. Like they are always trying to reinvent themselves, or they're always trying to prove themselves to people and get better. And like, I like athletes that think like that. I don't care who they are. I don't care if you're just a person that makes a fence. I don't care if you're like, you want to be the best you can be all the time and get better at it. That's people. The best people always think like that.
Every experience that is lived is a lesson. Whether it was a good or a bad experience, you've got to put yourself in the perspective to learn from it. There's always an opportunity for growth, regardless of how hard it is to see it at the beginning even. There's always an opportunity for growth. My question for you is, what are you going to do when it comes knocking? Are you going to be ready to go? In order to be ready to go, you're going to want to constantly work on yourself every day. Be prepared. Don't get prepared. How do you be prepared? You start today. You start now with one small task. You build on that task. You continue at it. You make sure that you do it every single day. It's a non-negotiable. That brings us right into our 3 main takeaways for the episode. Takeaway number 1, be prepared with your craft. I can't say it enough. Practice, practice, practice. Do not waste your time. Do not waste your engineer's time. Do not waste the time of the people around you, because time is worth more than anything else. Takeaway number 2, familiarize yourself with industry terms. If they can't communicate with you what they need to, how are you going to communicate with them what you need to? This miscommunication never results in a win. Main takeaway number 3, find ways to bring value to people who can potentially mentor you. This way you can level up faster. You can also find mentors online for free, just through YouTube channels. This is the method that I've used because my budget was incredibly low, living in the red. You know how it is. But even without a budget, you can do this. Next week, I'll be reflecting on the conversations that I had with songwriters and composers throughout seasons 1 to 3. I hope to see you there. This next week, Wednesday. All right, go produce. With all of that said, that brings us to the conclusion. Shout out to all the parties involved. Big shout out to Prevail Media Group for the facility and for all of your assistance throughout all of this. Big shout out to our sponsors. I know you're right around the corner and I am waiting for you. Big shout out finally to our listeners for listening to the entire episode. If you are on Apple Podcasts, please go ahead, leave us a review. If you're on Spotify, go ahead, hit that download button. But most of all, make sure to tell all of your music industry friends about the Go Produce podcast, where we explore how music industry professionals turn their passions into profit. More information at www.goproduce.ca. Go ahead, follow us on Instagram, and please consider contacting me directly at LOUIS@goproduce.ca. That's Louis at goproduce.ca. I would love to receive any and all feedback. That's it. That's everything. We out. Ooh.